Good afternoon by 1 minute, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners on Wednesday, August 23rd. I'm first. We have Kelly online and all the other commissioners in the room. And I'm going to turn to John to see if we have any additions or deletions to the agenda.
There are no additions or deletions to the agenda.
Although we did have one item moved, but it's off now? No.
No, we'll continue it when we get to it.
Okay. And so then, is there anybody in the room who'd like to make a public comment about something that's not on the agenda today, or anybody online? Anybody online? Probably not. Okay, I'm going to close public comment and see if we have any commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments?
I just want to extend our thoughts and prayers to the people in Maui, what they're living through and dealing with, and the fact that they are still missing hundreds and hundreds of people. I did speak with somebody locally whose son lives there, whose son is okay, and he is helping with rescue recovery efforts. I want to make sure that he stays safe and healthy while he's there helping out. So, yeah, it's very tragic. And then, you know, with the, what are they calling it in California? A hurricane. They had a hurricane and an earthquake all at the same time. So they're literally rocking and rolling out in California. But it's my understanding there were no fatalities based on that tropical storm that came through. Sounds like emergency management was stepped up to the plate, and it was ahead of the storm for the most part. But yeah, so if anybody thinks there's no such thing as climate change, I think they need to think again. So thanks.
Anybody else? I'd like to remind the public that Oaxaca is having a Latinx festival this week, starting tomorrow. It goes for 4 days, and it culminates on Sunday in Rio Grande Park, and Los Lobos will be playing. So look up the agenda and see what you can attend. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of fun.
I have one, Francie.
Okay.
I just learned years ago, my children were involved in a project to raise money for orphaned elephants in Africa. And they started a group called Kids Saving Elephants, and they had a number of kids here, and then kids elsewhere kind of caught wind of it and started doing it. And since then, they've moved on. They don't do it so much anymore. But back in the day, they had this idea that they wanted to invite Jane Goodall to come visit us. And I just learned today that she's coming.
Oh, really?
Not because of my daughters, but it just reminded me that she's coming to ACES on September 11th and 12th. She's going to speak at the local schools, and there'll be some events around her visit to Aspen. Unfortunately, one of my daughters, Isabella, will be off at college already by then, but I think Willow may still be here. So anyway, that's very exciting.
She was here about 20 years ago, and she
Right.
spoke at Snowmass for a lot of middle school groups, and I got to go, and my students were so enamored. They wanted to wait in line afterwards before they got on the bus to go back down
Go
Valley,
see her,
so
right.
they could meet her, and
Yeah.
she really inspired several of the kids. It was awesome. So I'm glad to hear she's back. Yeah.
So there's a lot of last year's high school seniors who are really starting to spread their wings these few weeks here, going off to college and various locations around the world. And I wish them all the best success in their endeavors and whatever their undertaking is going to be. Going off to college is exciting and scary, and it is a lot of work to be successful. So I hope they all work hard and are successful.
And they should remember to check in with their parents who are distraught.
Yeah, they need to all
She hasn't even left
write
yet.
their parents not an email message, but write them on paper and
Oh, that is
put a
not going to
postage
happen.
At
stamp
least
on it.
every 3 months.
That is not going to happen, Steve. My granddaughter is one of those, and she lives on the same property with me, and we're very close. And she lived at my house one year, and I'm going to miss her so much. She's at the University of Utah, which wasn't really on my radar before. But
Right. Close to home.
anyway,
Yeah.
and so we both are thinking about that. Okay, any further commissioner comments? Kelly, anything?
Yeah, I just have some thanks.
We
Thanks,
can't hear you.
Greg, for bringing that to our attention.
We can't hear
Jane
you,
Goodall
Kelly.
Is a personal. Oh, you can't hear me? I can hear all of you. Can we try again?
Nah.
Is there a? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I could hear all of you. So just a couple of thanks. I want to thanks Greg for bringing that to our attention. Jane Goodall is a personal hero of mine. I have had the chance to meet her and hear her speak and actually work on some legislation with her. So I would love to introduce my children to her, and I'm going to look for those events. And then I also, today kicked off schools for Aspen School District. The Roaring Fork started last week, but good luck to all the families and the students and the administrations getting settled in here. And I wanted to thank the sheriff and the sheriff's office. They're have been quite visible out on the roads during morning commutes. I am going up and down between Aspen and Basalt Elementary every day, and I think their presence has been meaningful and keeping traffic speeds safe. So I wanted to say that, and I'll let the sheriff know personally as well. Thank you.
I saw quite a few out today, including in Garfield County, which was unusual on 82.
So thank you for the reminder. I drove a school bus for 18 years of my life, and there was a child killed in Ohio in a school bus accident on the very first day of school this week. And I just urge everybody to be really cautious when school buses are loading and unloading or anywhere in your vicinity to, be careful. This one involved a collision. It wasn't when they were unloading the kids, but I hope everybody stays safe and we don't have any incidents here in the Roaring Fork Valley. And don't try to pass a school bus when they are stopped unloading kids. It's against the law. It's extremely dangerous. There was more than once when I realized a car was blowing by my stop sign, and I just stuck my arm out and grabbed the bar in the school bus to stop the kids from getting out of the school bus. It could be that close to having someone get run over by a car. So be careful. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I'll just add, this is a very active conversation in our house about not crossing streets and watching out for cars. And developmentally, children are not, it's not until they're 8 or 9 where they're really aware of cars moving around them and how to safely cross streets and everything. And so your message is really timely. Thank you.
Could I say one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Of course, it's been on everybody's minds for 3 weeks now, but if you had asked me 3 weeks ago what was more likely to catch fire, Red Mountain or the outskirts of Aspen or Brush Creek Village or you name any of our areas in Pickens County or Lahaina, I would have just said, well, it's clearly it'll happen here before it happens there, right? And what we saw happen in Lahaina was a combination of intense winds plus, power line problems. And the result, as we know, is devastating and tragic. It makes me want to redouble our efforts to reach out to homeowners in the rural parts who have not addressed fire mitigation along their homes because they're endangering their neighbors as well as themselves. And I know some people just refuse to think about it, and some of them are my neighbors. Luckily, I do have some neighbors. We've probably cut 4 acres of brush out along Solar Way where we are in Brush Creek, and it simply isn't enough. But other places just refuse to talk to us and refuse to let us on their property or anywhere nearby. And they are choked with scrub oak, sarvisberry, chokecherry, and it's ready to catch fire. And so I would like to just let people know that I'm going to be working more on this because I want people to sleep well at night knowing they're safe. So stay tuned, there'll be more. Thanks.
Yeah, in my neighborhood, it's uncut grass fields that are
And the
very
grass
high, and I
and
can
brittle.
just only imagine how fast the fire's going to come across those fields.
Yeah. Let's try not to imagine it, but let's prepare for it. Thanks.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to consent items. We have only one today, and it is the minutes of July 12th and July 26th, regular meetings. Does anybody want to talk about that or make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I
Okay. Individual consideration items. The first one is the first reading set for public hearing on September 13th, 2023. And it is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing the county manager and county attorney to execute the instruments necessary to amend and update the Pitkin County Employee Deed Restricted Housing Program. And we have Cara to talk to us about it.
Good afternoon now. Kara Silbernagel, Deputy County Manager. I do not have a presentation prepared. Would you like me to bring up the packet for the public or just talk through it?
Yeah, why don't you bring it up?
Okay. Hang on, let me just join real quick.
And while she's doing that, I'll just point out the reason you're getting a handout right now is because I did not have it ready for Kara at the end of last week by the packet deadline. So thank you for your patience with getting this attachment, which is attachment A, I think. This is the actual deed restriction we've been using in connection with the equity share program that's now been updated.
And it's
The-
redlined?
The updates are in red line to where it's been changed from what we've been using previously.
Did you do the description in the packet, Cara?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was very thorough. Thank you for that.
Sorry
It
for the
was.
misspelling in the
It
second
was.
paragraph that I missed. And of course, Zoom has decided to reinstall on my computer right now. Can I go on this one? Okay. Of course.
If we can't get it up, the public can go on the packet and look at it.
I can get it up real quick. I just.
All those hundreds of people who spend their Wednesday afternoons watching our meetings.
Sorry about that. Best of intentions.
When we get there, will you you'll explain the red line, the changes, just because I'm still trying to understand how significant that change is.
Yes, I will. Okay. So quick overview of the program and the changes that are being requested before you today. And it's not scrolling. Sorry. Thank you. So in 2017, the board established the Pitkin County Employee Deed Restriction Housing Program per Ordinance 23/2017 and made additional revisions in 2022. Essentially, an overview of the program is it allows employees to go in partnership with the county to buy down free market housing with them putting in up to 60%, or excuse me, with them purchasing the home and county participation of up to 40% or $300,000. The geographic range was initially from Carbondale throughout Pitkin County, and then in 2022 we made changes that changed the geographic location to throughout the Roaring Fork watershed and the RAFTA corridor. and then increased the county participation not to exceed 40%, but did increase that to $400,000 if it was in Pitkin County, and $300,000 if it was in the RAFTA corridor, but not within Pitkin County. So that's been the evolution of the program over the past few years. But other than that, no significant changes. When the program was originally established, we really talked about what happens within those first 5 years. And it was used for, the Housing Impact Fund was used for it, and really that it was becoming a county asset as the employee and a retention tool for employees. What has morphed is now that I can't do math off the top of my head today, 7 years into the program, we've seen quite a select handful of those homes exceed that employees have stayed in the program, and we've exceeded that 5-year mark. And so there's been a lot of what do we do to both maintain the goal of the program, but also acknowledge employees' long-term commitment to the organization, as well as then their ownership of the property. And so the request that is coming before the board today is primarily about the maximum resale value after 5 years. There's no changes to the program for the first 5 years. And so just a quick reminder what that is that it is the maximum resale price if an employee were to leave the organization or choose to sell the unit, is that it is capped at a 3% annual appreciation. What is being proposed is that after 5 years, that annual cap would actually increase to 7%, and that would be retroactive for the full X amount of years that the employee has owned the property. This is really twofold. It's one, recognizing when the program was originally set up, I think it was modeled off of a 10 or 20-year program and kind of annual housing rates, housing increases at a national and state level, and that was about 3%.
You mean interest rates on the housing?
Appreciation rates over a 20-year, like as you consider the highs and lows of the housing market.
Okay.
Obviously, that trend has changed immensely, even not just in our valley, but across the country, and definitely in the state. And so, one, acknowledging that long-term investment employees are putting in to the organization, as well as kind of the increases in the housing market, but still maintaining something that is really reducing that free market balloon that we've seen in the valley. And so that's the request of moving it to a 7% appreciation cap.
Can I ask a question? Just regarding the retroactivity of it? So I'm just trying to think theoretically, somebody buys a house for the first 4 years, 4.5 years of ownership, it appreciates at 3% or less. And then in the last year, it goes to 7, as we've seen everywhere. Does it make sense to consider it retroactively all the way back, or does it make sense to follow the actual? And I don't know. I haven't contemplated it, but I wanted to ask what you all think, and how did you arrive at this way of doing it?
You mean apply the 7% to the growth for the last few years for the
It sounds like a
current
7%
owners?
growth per year.
So it would be
retroactively?
calculated so at the point an employee chooses to sell the property, and the county, I should clarify, the county has the right of first refusal. So at that point, it would be an appraised value or a 7% annual, whichever is less. So let's say if it was 3% and then 7%, it's going to come out at whatever that appraised value is, or the 7% annually. So I should have clarified that.
Thank you. So the appraisal, okay, I get it.
And I just wanted to clarify that part of the reason also for the 7% was that interest rates had increased so significantly that if they were only appreciating at 3% and they had a mortgage at 7%, it was a significant loss of value for the employees, and so we were hoping to avoid that.
I know Kelly has her hand up.
Yes, Kelly?
Quick question, are we talking about 5 years from the purchase of the home purchase date or employment date?
Home purchase date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great clarification. It's 5 years within this program, not of employment.
Another question would, oh, sorry, Kelly or Patty, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's a time frame we're going to bring this back and reevaluate again. I mean, what if there's a huge drop in the market out there, or a huge rise again? So I think we need to have some kind of a time period where we can have you come back and show us what's working, what we might need to tweak, or which direction we might want to go.
Well, can't we come back anytime we want? And look at it again?
Yeah, but I just want to make sure we have something set up so it comes back. We don't wait until there's something catastrophic that goes on out there. Word of the week, by the way. So yeah, just to keep that in mind.
And currently it is always part of the budget appropriation process too, so if nothing else, if we see
back at
something
that time.
not
Okay.
working or working, it will
Just want
definitely
to
be
make sure
part of
that door remains open. Thank you.
Last
Greg?
question I had was just regarding the 7%. We're going to lock it again at 7% while we know the market fluctuates. Would it make sense to have it float with the interest rate, one of the prime rates or the cost of money? Just wondering, has that been considered? Would that be easier so we wouldn't have to do it again if it changes to 8% in 3 months or
Yeah,
5%?
and we had evaluated that ability, and it really there's an element too of this program is twofold. One, right, it's to buy down the purchase of the homes and make it affordable for the next person,
Yeah.
as well as finding some level of predictability. If you aren't playing in the full free market, then there's some level of knowing, are you at appraised value or the 7%? And so just between administratively looking at this and kind of what we're dealing with is why just having the 7% right now and seeing how that works as the next iteration of this program.
Got it. Okay. I'll accept that and we can watch it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It'll be interesting, but my guess is that over time, given the increase, if an employee holds the house long enough, the 7% will exceed the average market value increase over a period of 10 or 15 or even 20 years.
All right.
Who knows? But that's most likely
Kind of
would be my
anticipate
guess.
that,
Yeah.
And just for numbers, so currently in total, we've had 16 employees participate in this program. There's one pending, so maybe 17. But of that, we've got 9 that are currently in the program, and 4 of those are over that 5-year mark. The other 4 are like in years 1 through 3. So the number and volume, we can watch it pretty closely, and it's not a volume that's not manageable to
Great.
respond to. If we
And
need
will
to.
this be retroactive to when they hit 5 years, or are they just at 5 years coincidentally?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I
Well,
understand.
if this is their 8th year in the program, will we honor the last 3
Oh.
years at 7%, or will we start it now?
So if the board approves this, what we would do is ask all employees in the program would need to sign a new deed restriction, which is what was handed out to you, and then it would be applied at whichever point they chose to sell. So any employee that's in the program would have a new deed restriction, which would calculate the 7% at the point that they chose to sell the property.
Okay.
But it would be retroactive, I believe, as it was drafted by Kara. It would be retroactive for the 8 years they've been in the program. So the increase in value would begin 8 years prior as opposed to the date when they actually enter the program now.
And the new deed
as she's
restriction.
drafted it right now.
What? The 7% will go back to when they first got in the program?
That's the way it's currently
Yes.
drafted.
Awesome. Okay. Kelly?
Sorry, this is super wonky, but if we are holding the right of first refusal, do we have to carry this as a liability on our budget?
No, because you're not obligated to buy the unit. You just have the ability, you have first right of refusal, and so you could make that decision based on available resources or appropriations.
Thank you.
So I think one is just confirming that it is the 7% would be retroactive to the total years in the program, not to Francie, I think your question just from years 5 through 8. So that's one element of it. Then the second change that is part of this is increasing, again, costs are just increasing, so acknowledging that currently the employees can get credit for capital improvements. It's modeled off of the APSHA program. It was capped at 10%, which I don't know if you can get much capital improvements done for 10%. And so the request is to increase that maximum credit to 20% of the home price. So and then we also revamped the capital improvement policy, which was included in your packet. And then the third element, which is kind of leading on Kelly's question, is that with this change, it is best to, currently this program has been funded from the Housing Impact Fund. With this change, because it really is a combination of buying down free market, but also for employees, is recommended that we move it to the general fund, and that would come before you as a supplemental request to do that transfer in Q3. Currently there's about $2 million worth of assets that we would be repaying, a little over $2 million, that we would then repay the Housing Impact Fund, and then would start kind of a separate category in the capital fund for the capital general fund.
Okay. Questions for Kara about that?
I have a quick question. So
Patty?
when we're modeling the capital improvement, we're also, what I think APSHA did was life safety issues, what those things are exempt from this, because we want to incentivize people to do those.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we did the other change that we made, just to be a little bit more reflective of board policy, was a little bit more generalities about energy efficiency improvements. I think before is very specific to like solar and thermal, and we just generalized it a little bit more to encourage those energy efficiencies, window panes, and everything like that.
Okay, across the board, thanks.
Great. Any more questions? Yeah, Steve?
So I'd like to make a motion.
Go for it.
I move to approve the ordinance authorizing the county manager and county attorney
What?
Turn your mic on, Steve. Take two.
to update the Picken County Employee Deed Restricted Housing Program set for second reading on September 13th.
I'll second that.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving this ordinance, please say aye.
Aye, thank
Aye.
you, Kara and Roy. Appreciate that.
Aye.
Great, thank you, Kara.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have a individual consideration item, which is a public hearing. This is the second reading for these next 6, I think. And the first one here is the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing a contract between Picken County and the Colorado Department of Human Services for the provision of services by work number. Hi,
Yes,
Matt.
good afternoon.
I won't say anything today.
Totally okay if you have questions or comments. Yes, I'm here for a second reading to authorize our contract between Picken County and the state of Colorado. Some background is we enter into a contract that assists our economic assistance program staff in determining eligibility for many of the programs that we operate. So in this, a couple of the key discussion items here was that this is a really beneficial service for our staff, and it's beneficial to the clients in our community, where it really streamlines the process for when people are applying for these programs. And so that's the value in this contract. The big difference this year is that the state increased the minimum contract amount quite substantially for us. From $539, it's now $5,332. This was a big increase that many of the smaller counties had to kind of convene and discuss on whether it was worth continuing this, but it was unanimous that this is something that is of value. The overall cost it really saves us from needing to look at maybe increasing staff. And again, the benefit that this gives to the community is it reduces barriers for people to accessing these benefits. So, is there any questions on this or concerns?
I'm good.
I have the same concern, just the invasion of privacy, and so I'll be abstaining from the vote again, but I will sign whatever I have to sign.
Yeah, totally understandable. One thing that is complicated with, our work is we do have multiple data systems that we work in and out of, and it is something we have to be very careful with to be secure with people's information. And that's one thing that we have annual training and policy on. Obviously, the state and this organization has their own standards as well. Just
It
to
was
throw that-
interesting to see how small our fees were compared to some of the cities.
Yeah.
So if there's no more questions, I'll look for a
Kelly?
motion.
Public hearing.
What?
Kelly has her hand up.
Public hearing, yes. And Kelly?
Thank you. Yeah, Francie, your question probed something for me, I guess. As I understand it, Colorado changed laws a bit to allow some benefits to be extended to undocumented individuals. I believe housing is part of that, but I wasn't sure if there were other benefits that we process as a county that extend to that population, and if this database causes any problems with doing that.
Not sure I can answer that. I'm not 100% sure. I'm looking to Sam on the screen to see if he has any background on that.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, and it's been hard to work within those realms for a long time. Really, people are encouraged to provide their true verifiable information. So if you don't have a valid social security number, which is how this system really works, it connects people's reported income by their employers to their social security number. People are encouraged not to provide false information. So if you don't have a social security number, they don't provide that, at which point we go through the more manual process of income verification, like pay stubs or bank statements or whatever. So it doesn't cause any issues there.
Great question, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
I would just add, many of our federal programs aren't open to that. And so we really look to some of our local funds and different grants so that we can provide additional services for those who are not documented here.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is
I'm
there any-
grateful we do, so thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, me too. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to make comment on this program? Anybody online? I doubt if Joe is online for that. So I will close the public hearing and see if there's any more comments from commissioners or anybody would like to make a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve the resolution authorizing a contract between Pitkin County and the Colorado Department of Human Services for the provision of services by work number.
Second the motion?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, Matt.
Aye.
I am abstaining. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Now we have a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Aspen, Aspen Valley Hospital, Town of Snowmass Village, and the Town of Basalt to provide detoxification and withdrawal management in Pitkin County. And Sam is going to talk to us about this.
Well, I think I get to be Lindsay today. Sam, do you want to take this, or am I taking this one?
And if you like, I think we probably both have about the same background.
I'll let you go then. I thought I was doing it. I'm happy to let you do it.
All right, perfect. So Lindsay did bring this before the board 2 weeks ago for the first reading. This is an IGA for provision of detoxification services, which is handled by Recovery Resources. We've been working with them since 2014, as well as other partners, including the City of Aspen, Aspen Valley Hospital, Town of Snowmass Village, and Town of Basalt, to provide detox and withdrawal management services up at the Human Services Building. The major change, or the change here, really, the money's staying about the same. There were just some slight adjustments to the percentages by which the payments are being made. I would also add that they have recognized that there are some additional needs in our community around these services, and the partners have committed to some strategic planning around detoxification management and homeless management services in 2025 to look at how this can best serve our community. But for this year right now, everyone on this agreement has agreed to move forward with the stated amounts and with the continued services, which are meeting a significant need in our community right now.
Anybody have questions for Sam? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this? I don't see anybody, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Come back to the commissioners.
I have a comment.
Mhm.
I just want to thank all the partners. This is definitely a need we have outside of just Pickens County, within the municipalities and with the hospital's participation. So I think it's a great agreement that we have, and it's something we've been talking about the need for many, many years. So I'm glad to see it moving forward. And again, just we couldn't do it without our partners.
Thank you. Patty, do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve an intergovernmental agreement for the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners, City of Aspen, Aspen Valley Hospital, Town of Snowmass Village, Town of Basalt, to provide detoxification and withdrawal management in Pickens County.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we have a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners approving an intergovernmental agreement between the BOCC and the City of Aspen, Aspen Valley Hospital, the Town of Snowmass Village to support the emergency overnight shelter at the Schultz Health and Human Services Building. John?
John,
Sam?
Go ahead,
You
Sam.
guys duke it out.
All right, I'll go ahead. So this one, and much like the previous one, is with Recovery Resources, with many of the same partners in the previous IGA. And this, it is a smaller contracted amount because fortunately Recovery Resources was able to bring in additional funding to help support this service, which is still called the overnight winter shelter, but it actually has been expanded to year-round services. So they have 12 beds available in the Human Services building for folks without housing to be able to spend the night, which in winter is particularly a need, but also year-round we have people who find themselves without housing. So the amount that Pickens County and the partners are providing here has been largely offset by additional funding that Recovery Resources was able to pull in to expand this housing. So they are able to offer services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to folks who are experiencing homelessness. And again, it's a great service to provide to our community.
I love that we have this. It's just awesome.
I do want to note, related to both of these IGAs, there are changes at the state level, particularly in the requirements around detox that are going to be affecting our model going forward. And so we are going to be working with these same partners to plan for future case management services. How are we going to deliver detox under the new requirements, which frankly have made it a lot harder for smaller rural communities to afford detox services, because it's really a movement from a social detox to a medical detox model, which has much higher staffing and much higher qualifications, including doctors and nurses to be involved in that. And so I do want to note that we are having these discussions with our funding partners, and we're re-entering these IGAs under our current model, fully knowing that we're going to be coming back to y'all to be talking about changes in this next year.
And there are
So I just wanna
there
note
are
that.
no exemptions possible for small rural communities.
There have been none that we, of course, are asking these questions. We have not gotten a positive response on that. Yeah.
Yeah, Greg.
Question just on the percentages. I just noticed between the detox and the shelter. How did the amounts that each contributes get calculated? I'm still trying to figure that out.
So I can take this one, Sam, because that's a history one. So we had originally, when we originally did the IGA, we had developed a kind of a complex formula to bring everyone together under what we thought was fair. And that included a combination of each entity's population, the number of admits who was admitting into the detox, and then the number of liquor licenses annually. And we would go through an annual calculation, which always came too late for everyone by the time we compiled the relevant data and updates from DOLA and such. And after a number of years of going through that more complex model, the percentages between the entities didn't change a whole lot. And so in order to simplify for budget purposes, so that each entity would know sooner in the process roughly what their contribution would be for budgeting, everyone agreed to kind of stick with a percentage basis. And so that's how we ended up there, Greg.
That's for the detox.
That's for the detox.
Okay, then how did
And then the homeless is based on a historic, basically, contribution model. Recovery Resources, as Sam said, was able to draw down some grant dollars that brought down that overall cost. And basically, there were historic contributions made to the nonprofit. Those got rolled into whatever folks were budgeting, and there was not necessarily as much science or agreement on funding. There was more bringing forward funding that had previously gone to the nonprofit and coming into this. Now, the case management resources are shared now between detox and the homeless shelter, so there's a little bit more gray area, I think, there in terms of how those dollars are being used to support the case management resources in particular.
Got it. Yeah, the reason I ask is just obviously
So
the
different.
county pays a lot more, a higher percentage, and I wonder why is Aspen Valley Hospital even part of the calculus? You know, just it doesn't
For
make sense.
homeless?
For the homeless shelter. Yeah.
So actually, the hospital is greatly impacted and has been a really good supporter, because what was happening, particularly even when we had the nonprofit, was especially on cold days, between the time when a shelter, an overnight shelter, would close down at the church, for example, there would be a gap, and the population would be seeking a warm place to be, and the hospital is set up 24/7, and the hospital ended up setting up warming rooms, basically, and so was also trying to manage the population without case management resources. So really having this day center that is open all the time with low barrier, it's not a day center, I'm sorry. Sam, what are we calling this again? I'm sorry, I just totally blanked.
Resiliency Center.
The Resiliency Center, that actually has taken some of those gaps out and taken some of the pressure for managing populations off our partners like the hospital.
Got it. Okay. Then the last question up for me is, it seems that the city of Aspen pays a pretty small amount, considering my guess is they have a fairly large impact on the population. I could be completely wrong about that. It could be most of the homeless are living outside the city limits, or maybe that's part of the calculus. I just don't understand it.
That was never considered in the calculus. This was more based on historic grants, and so we were more, through particularly the Healthy Community Fund with the nonprofit entity. Previously, we participated at a higher level, and the city, which generally had a smaller fund for social service nonprofit grants, participated at a lower level and is really carrying forward those historic. So it wasn't formula or such driven. It was how do we reallocate the resources that we were contributing into this new model.
Got it. And City of Aspen residents are contributing to the Healthy Community Fund already, so they're paying for this even though it's coming through the county.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
Can I
Any
just
other
have a quick question back to detox? We took into consideration the number of liquor licenses, and I think we discussed this in the past. we did not take into consideration the number of recreational marijuana licenses, did we?
No, we did not.
Okay. Because I know we had a concern about that, the contributing factor, but, okay. Because we know how many we have in the county.
Do we provide detox for marijuana usage?
Well, it's part of the whole schematic of detoxification.
It's multiple substance. Alcohol is our number one, which is why I think we're focused on alcohol. There wasn't as much evidence at the time around
Right.
that. I think, which is why the questions come up around marijuana and how that would drive detox. It was primarily alcohol, which I think is why we stuck with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Well, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who would like to discuss this detoxification or ask questions? And, yeah. And the Schultz. What? Oh, yeah, okay. Anybody in the public? Online? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, again, I want to comment and thank everyone for the partnership. That we really appreciate everyone's efforts here. And again, we can't do it alone, so all the help we can get is greatly appreciated. And I will make a motion to approve an intergovernmental agreement between Pekin County Board of County Commissioners, City of Aspen, Aspen Valley Hospital, Town of Snowmass Village to support the overnight shelter at the Schultz Health and Human Services Building.
I'll second that.
Steve?
Comment. I know a gentleman who has made use of our services at the overnight shelter in the past, and he lives in Denver. He's the homeless guy I know in Denver. And he was actually interviewed by Mayor Mike Johnston a couple of weeks ago, because Mike is working on trying to house the homeless people in Denver. And so I thought it was really interesting that, I have no idea what they talked about, but there's the possibility that what we are doing here actually could influence what the mayor in Denver is doing for the homeless people there, just based on his interview with one person who has, been in our overnight shelter here. So I'm really glad we have this facility open, and I'm glad that it's open year-round now.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. Now, thank you, Sam. Now we have a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing the chair to sign a discretion aviation grant resolution 23-ASC-01 with the Colorado Department of Transportation, Division of Aeronautics, in the amount of $340,898 for pavement rehabilitation of taxiway A and the de-ice pad with associated facilities at the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport Sardi Field.
Thank you, Commissioners. Diane
Diane.
Jackson, Airport Deputy Director, here for the second read for this. Our 2023 CDOT has agreed to assist in the funding of the pavement rehab for Taxiway Alpha and the de-ice pad and associated facilities. We're seeking Commissioners' authorization to sign the grant and accept it for $340,898, and that is 5% of the 10% remaining of the federal funding grant that you previously approved.
It's 5% of the 10%?
So it's 5, right? So we're responsible for the last 5% of that.
It's 5% of the total.
Correct.
Okay, just.
So
checking.
the federal grant that you previously approved for $5 million, a little over $5 million, this is the 5% that the state has agreed to fund.
Is this for work that's
Okay.
been done already, or
It
is this
was.
for-
It was completed
Right.
in the May closure.
Thought so. Yeah. Okay. Just.
Okay, well, I don't think we need to ask questions.
No,
right?
I was just wondering if you could add a couple zeros to it and maybe
Right.
do a little more work after the headline in today's paper, which, by the way, was a little shocking. Not absolutely a correct reflection of our discussion yesterday about the condition of our runway surfaces. So I want the public to know that they didn't have to take a gasp, they can take a deep breath.
Wouldn't 5% be 500,000?
Of the
Of the original?
of
Original
the
10
eligible
million?
portion, no.
Only part of that is eligible, or?
Of the eligible portion of our
Okay,
grant,
fine.
yeah.
I'm gonna look for a motion to approve accepting this money.
Except you have to have a public hearing first.
It is a public hearing. Is anybody in the public out there want to talk about this? I don't think so. I'm gonna close the public hearing. Thank you, Patty.
I will make a motion to approve the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, authorizing the chair to sign discretionary aviation grant resolution 23 ASC 01 with the Colorado Department of Transportation, Division of Aeronautics, in the amount of $340,000 and $348.98 for pavement rehabilitation of taxiway Alpha and the de-ice pad with associated facilities at the Aspen-Pickens County Airport, Sardi Field. I always have to take a deep breath in our lengthy titles on this
I
one.
just want to correct that amount, 340,898.
Yes. And I wanted to add like a bunch of zeros after it, but I guess we can't do that.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, we will
Just
have
gonna
that
say,
sent
I'd
over
throw
for
it-
signature.
I was gonna throw like $2 in and bring it up to 340,900, just make it easier.
Makes it
Thank
easier
you,
to read
Diane.
out
See me
loud.
afterwards.
Yeah. Don't forget this, the change thrown in there.
Are you here for Paul today, Dale? Okay. So the next item is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing acquisition of a conservation easement on the Colorado outward bound parcel. And it looks like we have Dale Will to present that to us. And Brian. And Aaron. Hi.
By the way, last time we were here, you had requested that the rain stop while the hay was being baled. Could you bring it back now, please?
Well, he's bailing today, so if you could just wait a few hours, please.
Okay.
Good luck with that. Speaking of rain and you know, it's such a geologically active area right up there by the Outward Bound School, and that, you know, Lead King and all that. I always just remember torrential storms and mud flows and rock slides, and like, it's exciting up there. So if you've been up lately, any reports on
I was there yesterday.
did that rain come through?
Did you hit
and-
that rain?
There's a hailstorm and rainstorm that lasted for like 10 or 15 really quality minutes.
Yeah.
We had
yeah.
that.
And then it blue sky.
Before things liquefied.
Yeah.
Yeah, it rained up here for really hard
Had
for about
about the
10
same,
minutes.
Yeah, so same, must have got there a little bit before.
Okay, trying to figure out how to operate the computer here. Hello, I'm Dale Will, the Acquisition Director for Pickens County Open Space and Trails. And I'm joined by my friends from the Aspen Valley Land Trust, Aaron Quinn and Brian Hightower.
Hi, thanks.
And I understand that we had a great discussion at first reading. Paul was pitch hitting for me that day because I was off in the Northwest visiting my grandkids, but
2 grandkids.
2 of them. Yeah. Happy to be here today, and let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen here. Whoa. Okay, I want to do this. So what we're here to talk about is an effort by the Aspen Valley Land Trust really to acquire the campus of the Colorado Outward Bound School. And the idea is that if we fund the purchase of this conservation easement, it will enable the land trust to have the funds to actually close on the property. This is a deal structure that we used on the Kaufman Ranch with good success fairly recently. And it's been unanimously recommended by the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Board. And we're all pretty excited about it. I have to kind of comment that the project shows how this watershed that we live in really functions as one community. And although this property is in Gunnison County, the amount of support for this acquisition that came from the Aspen School District and the Aspen Parks Department shows how integral this entire watershed is, and this particular property in particular. And from my perspective with my work with open space, I really appreciate the Aspen Valley Land Trust in helping put together these projects that they lie in counties outside our jurisdictional boundaries, but within the sphere of interest of our citizens. And we've been able to use our funds to leverage a lot more fundraising for things like the Red Hill acquisition outside of Carbondale and Coffin Ranch outside of Carbondale, and then most recently this proposal, which is almost in the town of Marble. You can see on the map here, this is Marble, and just up Daniels Hill, you come to property that AVLT acquired a little while ago. They call their Marble Base Camp, and here is the Colorado Outward Bound School campus property. It was their first outdoor ed campus in the United States. Yeah. And one of the great things that AVLT's done recently is added a whole outdoor ed coordination component to their work, and this property would fit right into that. I think without going on any longer, I'll invite the AVLT staff to talk about why this is an important project and what we could expect if we fund it.
Well, thanks for having us again. I don't want to repeat myself too much, so I just appreciate you guys' support a couple weeks ago. And again, you can see just proximity to our existing resource. You know, this acquisition is really going to help safeguard that existing resource while also enhancing it and lowering the entry point for kids to get outside. Turns out cabins and running water are helpful. So, yeah. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think what Dale was talking about in terms of the where this lies geographically outside of the county. I think one of the significant things about the way we conceptualize what to do up there is that it largely includes the youth of Pickens County and the Greater Valley. So, despite its location, what we anticipate is that the users of this great campus are your constituents, anyways. And but I'm super grateful as well. It's just I've been one of the parts of the choir for outdoor education in this valley for the last 25 years, and I'm just really inspired by the commitment of this place and the people that live here to create opportunities for kids to get off their screens and to be in the woods. And I think it's really important now more than ever. And I'm just grateful that you're considering this and appreciate your support.
I have a question. And so will Open Space and Trails be managing the site? No?
No. Thanks, Francie. What we would hold is simply a conservation easement. And I actually love this change of roles because historically it's been way more common for the Aspen Valley Land Trust to hold a conservation easement on Pickens County open space properties. And Smuggler Mountain and Sky Mountain Park and North Star, there's a lot of those that fit into that category. In this instance, we are the ones with, in a way, the easy job, which is showing up once a year to make sure that the terms of the conservation easement are being adhered to. And it's also important for the potential succession of the property. As long as AVLT is owning and managing it, we probably aren't too worried about things going awry up there. But this conservation easement that we will be acquiring runs with the land, and no matter who ends up with the property in the future, we will be able to ensure that it doesn't turn into commercial off-road vehicle paradise facility of some kind. or any other type of development that's inconsistent with the conservation values up there. This property does have significant elk and deer winter habitat value, and consequently my understanding is that the AVLT activities will have a seasonal closure. With the work that was done by Tom Cardamone and the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative, that Daniels Hill here on this southern facing exposure was identified as one of the critical places to try to protect for that winter range for our animals. So the conservation easement can do all of that and still leave ample opportunity for the educational programs that Brian can put on the table to happen. But they'll be responsible for buildings and all that fun stuff.
Now accepting volunteers.
And for
You can sign up at.
Yeah.
if the public's curious, that an organization cannot hold its own easement because we're not allowed to monitor ourselves, which is why this always is an exchange between our
You mean you
parties.
can't own property and the easement on it? Because
That's
you have
right.
lots of easements.
Right. We can't own the property and the easement
Okay.
because by law, the easement has to be monitored every year, and we're not allowed to go in and monitor our own easement. There's just a conflict of interest
On
there.
your own property.
Exactly. That's right.
And there's a good old common law legal issue, which is called the doctrine of merger, where a conservation easement is regarded as some of the property rights that have been separated from the underlying fee interest ownership. But if you own both, then by operation of the common law, everything merges back together. And there's no longer a property right that's held by an independent entity, and the conservation easement essentially melds back into the underlying ownership. So to have this layer of protection, we have to use separate entities, and GOCO really likes seeing this on properties it funds the acquisition of. So on Sky Mountain Park, for example, we needed to have a third party hold the conservation easement to make sure that no matter what Pitkin County might decide to do with that property down the road, it would be restricted to environmental uses. And this is the same idea.
Okay, thank you. Patty?
Yeah, the Clapper family has a long history up there, going way back. And then my kids, of course, through the Aspen School District. And hopefully now my grandkids will be able to utilize it. But that being said, it was also home base for the Udall family, from both Mark and his brother, and that was very special. And for previous commissioner George Newman. And my new next door neighbors across the street met at the base camp in Leadville. And they've moved back here they moved to Maine and now back. And now their kids are part of the Aspen School District. So they are excited that their kids now get to enjoy this parcel. So it's just so beneficial to so many, again, without any boundaries as far as jurisdictional. We're all in this valley together, and this is another proof that, we can work together to accomplish great things. So thank you guys for bringing it forward.
I should probably add just a quick summary of the financial side of this deal. The purchase price that AVLT's negotiated with Outward Bound is $1.85 million. What we're proposing is to fund $500,000 towards this conservation easement, but you can see with that ratio that a little bit of funding from open space multiplies itself several times when AVLT gets involved to do what it does well, which is pool funding from multiple sources for these acquisitions. So we appreciate the bang for the buck, and we think that the conservation easement is easily worth about 28% of the total value of this property. So,
Francie?
Yes.
Thank you for explaining that. So where do we go from here? ABLT has the heavy lift now. We're helping get you to maybe due diligence, or I don't know where you are with but you needed this to help. And I'm so grateful Pitkin County commissioners are contributing to this. This would be a good time I'll make the appeal for the alumni of our school system, including me, who who went through the Outward Bound program in outdoor ed, in 8th grade outdoor ed, and perhaps at other times as well. As we've said before, virtually everybody who's been through our school system highlights that week as the top experience they had in their entire career in the Aspen schools, and probably other schools in the valley as well. So this would be a great time to make a pitch to those alumni to pitch in. Is that what we're going to see happen here?
Yeah, so you're right. So the easy part is buying this property, and then the difficult part begins. We have established about a $3.5 million budget just to get this place up and running and functioning. So the $500,000 is incredibly helpful. We do have a long ways to go, though. There's a lot of deferred maintenance. There's a lot of continued maintenance. There's a lot of water system work that's going to need to be done. So yeah, if you have any interest or love for the area up there, just reach out to us. We'll have a couple service days. There's a lot of stuff that just needs to go. There's a lot of stuff that needs to get repaired. If anybody has well drilling equipment just lying around, just head on up.
But in
I'm
terms
sure
of
Francie's
money,
got some.
is this going to be part of the capital campaign?
Yeah, we're going to tie this into a larger capital campaign. But I mean, honestly, AVLT's been around for, almost 60 years at this point, and every dollar counts. It really does. I know a lot of people think, oh, wow, you have Aspen philanthropic givers, and that's true. However, we are totally a grassroots organization. I mean, $10 means the world to us. So, I mean, just any little bit of support goes a long way.
AVLT.org.
That's right.
Pass your hat around, Brian.
with well drilling equipment attached.
Yes. Helicopters to get it up there.
Any other questions or comments?
That's great.
I had a question.
Steve.
With your access being up Daniels Hill, and with all the publicity about Daniels Hill and the ATVs and where they park, and sometimes people would get, I think, stuck on trying to go up Daniels Hill.
Just recently.
Yeah.
Has that
Friday.
caused any trouble for you to get to access the property?
Friday.
And what do you do when you can't get up there?
We've never actually been, well, we have, but natural reasons, like, road mudslide, whatever, but,
There's,
yeah.
so the programs that are currently running on the Chapin Wright base camp, which is the one that's just up the hill from the Outward Bound School, the programs that run there are all hike-in programs. So we tell schools no kids are allowed in vehicles going up Daniels Hill Road. So that's the first part of their journey, is to get from Beaver Lake to the campus. Most of the vehicles that go up there are in support, so there's not necessarily a time crunch on when they arrive. They're not necessarily essential to the kids' successful getting there. But yeah, the road it's definitely it's been a concern. The Forest Service has put some fixes in in the past. There always seems to be an issue after the snow melt on that road. It was last year, I think, the culvert blew out on the last turn before the Crystal turn. There's a creek that comes down out of the hillside. Two creeks confluence together, and they blew out a culvert. All that water, instead of running through the culvert and across the hillside, went down Daniels Hill and scoured out every rock in the shale, and it used to be filled in, and then it became kind of cavernous. So there was some work done. Every year is a kind of a discussion between Gunnison County, the town of Marble, and White River National Forest about where does one stop and where does one begin. But I think based on the amount of trips I've been up there this year and how it can be a little bit daunting, and I think by design, I guess in the past, I think a lot of people in Marble would want it to be challenging to get there. But I think we're going to have some conversations down the road with all the stakeholders to keep that road operational. But it can be a problem. In the 7 or 8 years that we've owned property up there, it's only rarely is it like undrivable. And that's usually because the White River National Forest is putting a fix in at the time.
And I'll just echo a little bit what Brian just said, and to answer your question, Steve, I do think that a lot of the stakeholders along Daniels Hill are going to have to come together to find an alternative, not necessarily a vehicular alternative, but for kids or for marble visitors, whatever that might look like. An alternative action plan for Crystal Mills popularity or whatever it might be.
We've had some conversations with people who are very much invested in marble and have been so for a long time, about how to change the experience from having to hike Daniels Hill to something that might be a pedestrian trail. And it would have to be an agreement among several different property owners to do, but we've got some buy-in. In fact, one of the properties that recently sold that's adjacent to the Outward Bound School wrote in a pedestrian easement into their closing, and that was one of the requests that we had of the realtor, and he put it in there, and it was great. So I think it's slow. We're slowly starting to get to a place where we can maybe offer a safe alternative to the road.
You may hear more from us. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Well, maybe we might be back.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear.
Daniels
There's
Hill, yeah.
progress being made there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I was at a meeting with the Forest Service a few years ago, and they said that most people who experience marble beyond Beaver Lake, their first experience is hiking up Daniels Hill. And if you've been there in the summertime when it hasn't rained in a couple of weeks, it's very, very like fine dust, and passing cars and pedestrians is not pleasant. Yeah.
Okay.
Any further comments? All right, it's a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on the conservation easement contribution to Colorado Outward Bound campus? I don't think so. I'm closing the public hearing, and I'll look for a motion.
I'd make a motion, with pleasure, if I can find it here. Authorizing, the board authorize acquisition of a conservation easement on the Colorado Outward Bound parcel.
I'll second the motion with great pleasure.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you,
Come
guys.
back again
Thank you, guys.
soon.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
we'll try.
Thank you. This is the fun part.
Can we take a little 5-minute?
Sure.
Thanks.
All right, let's see, it's 1:13. Let's reconvene at 1:20. Andorra will be back at 1:20. All right, we have, welcome back to our regular meeting on Wednesday, August 23rd for the Board of County Commissioners. We are now moving into land use public hearings. And this is a resolution approving one constrained site transferable development right for Independence 44681 LLC. And Leslie will be presenting to us. It looks like Suzanne's here also.
So, you all first heard this 2 meetings ago. I forget the date, actually, and then the 12th of August. July.
July 26th, I thought.
And the applicant at the time asked you, we went through the whole presentation, my presentation, and Rob Sinclair made his presentation for the applicant. And Rob then asked for a continuance. And prior to your hearing this at the beginning of the month, we asked for another continuance at the applicant's request. The applicant originally, in their application, requested 2 transfer development rights from a constrained site. Staff is recommending 1 constrained site TDR for the property. I can go through the presentation again with maps and everything if you'd like. I'm ready to, or we can turn it over to Mr. Sinclair and he can give you any updates that have occurred based upon his conversations with his client.
I'm fine with turning it over to him. I read the packet pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
have
need to
one
stop
question
sharing,
this time.
Rob. Are you putting something up on
I'm
the
not
screen?
on, I've got to get on Zoom first, actually. Sorry.
You might need help.
But while I'm doing this, or trying to do this, I'll start, because you guys are on like record pace. I thought I had all day, but, yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Not at all.
So, thank you. We applied for 2 TDRs. The code section says 1 or more. It's the only ambiguous section of the code in that regard. The rest of them say 1 or none, or, that aspect of our application was relying on sort of extenuating circumstances.
I don't think you introduced yourself. Would you do that?
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry.
public, please?
Rob Sinclair, architect and representative for 44681
Thank you.
Highway 82.
Thanks.
Some things that I want to make clear, because I'm not sure they were. I know, when I left, I was confused about who was confused or not. The LLC that owns both of these properties is 44681 Independence LLC. The original purchase was for 44681 Highway 82. We went through the land use process and received hearing officer determination number 2 of 22, and we have been proceeding with design and engineering and all the other aspects that go with a building permit application.
For
Thanks.
both
Okay.
lots or just the upper lot?
So, yeah, that's what I want to make clear.
Yeah.
When we started this process, TDRs were abundant and affordable. And they were very quickly expensive and scarce. So I proposed an idea, because of this code section, we can buy TBD popcorn and exchange it as a constrained site. I'd been there, I knew it was constrained. For 2 TDRs, and thinking it was a good idea. It's going to balance it out. You're moving floor area from one to the other. I am going to share because I want to make sure everybody understands the
So to
proximity.
transfer the floor area to the property that's on Highway 82 from the property on Popcorn Lane, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That was the notion.
Transfer it to 161 Popcorn Lane, is that correct?
Take it off
Transfer it to-
Popcorn Lane and transfer it
Yeah,
across
let
the
me,
highway.
They're both on,
I want to make this clear for everybody.
please.
Can I just, so previously, the hearing officer approval that Rob refers to, that was a approval to tear down and replace a home, and the hearing officer approval approved the use of 2 TDRs to expand the square footage of the home. So
And
that
that-
approval lives, that approval was done last year. And the size of the home that was approved requires landing 2 TDRs on that site.
And that site is across Highway 82 from the Popcorn Lane
So
site.
this graphic should illustrate a little better. I somehow I did not have access to this at our last meeting. So Popcorn Lane is here. 44681 is here. So it's, you know.
Wait a minute, do that again, please.
44681 is here, upper right.
Okay,
Popcorn Lane is lower left.
and they're both owned by the same entity.
Owned by the same entity, with the notion that going through this process, we could move the floor area from one to the other. So, you know, we presented that. I presented that at the last meeting. It was, and much appreciated, but it was evident that we were headed towards 1 TDR at the time. And, you know, if I would agree to that, so anyway, I needed to confer with my clients. So I appreciate the opportunity to come back and discuss it further. Walking in with the same application, you know, I don't want to waste anybody's time. So I really brainstormed, because the outcome of this is kind of on me, because it was my idea. So Leslie spent about an hour of the first day of her vacation on a Zoom with me, and we sort of kitchen sinked it. And the very last thing that I mentioned was, what I really want to do is, it's a nomenclature or whatever it is, I want to be clear that we're not commoditizing these. I don't even associate a price with them. It's really the floor area. So in that notion, I feel like I'm kind of walking across the street. And Steve, you said something like that in the last meeting. So the only thing that, you know, sort of piqued Leslie's interest was, if this was a GMQS, we'd be competing, and there would be sort of a public benefit component. I sort of figured the public benefit was the house wasn't getting built, you know, all of the associated things with that. So I've been through several GMQS applications, and, you know, sometimes you have to think outside of the box. You know, currently, there is all of the trail and parking work along 82. So I reached out to Open Space and just said, you know, is there anything that is unfunded, anything that needs to go across the finish line? You know, my clients are very private. This isn't, you know, all this would want to be anonymous. And, you know, so looking at this as if it were a GMQS, I was trying to convince them that, and they are philanthropically minded, but, you know, is there something that they could relate to that would be interesting as well? What's a good give back? So Jesse at Open Space mentioned there's a new forest ranger position, something like that. Could we underwrite, you know, part of that salary or compensation? Does he need a truck? Do the new parking areas need a snowplow? Something like that.
Are we talking about Wildwood?
Well, kind of all along 82, where there's still, you know, the work is nearly complete. And, you know, this wasn't referred to them. They're not endorsing that notion, but it, you know, there were 3 or 4 things that, the big one is that the takeout for the paddle boards, which is a disaster, like at the end of the day. Everybody's there, and apparently there's some plan in the works. I don't know what it is. But I had another idea yesterday as I was, actually Monday night, I flew in and a friend of mine mentioned his twins are going to the community school. And I remembered, my kids went to a couple years of preschool there. And the neighbor actually across the street, right about here, I met with yesterday just to kind of walk through the project and be a good neighbor and let them know, because we're getting ready, we have a demolition permit, so we're getting ready to demolish the house. She mentioned, and I had forgotten, about the state of the road up to the community school. So I drove up there last night. It averages about 12 to 13 feet wide. There are 3 pinch points that are 11 feet wide. And it jogged my memory about the buses and the moms and dads. And so I spoke to the dad that I had met the other day, this morning, with this sort of new idea. And, to sort of accomplish what I would think would be kind of the maximum kind of contribution would really be like a life safety issue. Is it guardrails? Is it repaving? Is it, widening the road? That's a big project. I think we would be prepared to participate in something that would at least give that a nudge. And the school and the neighbors up there, I think they've been thinking about it. All the resources went to the school and buildings themselves. But, I'm acquainted with one of the neighbors. So there are a lot of people that I think if somebody sort of stepped up would contribute. And, that's a project that could move forward, have a real benefit. And so my request is we have the 1 TDR, which is much appreciated. Since we met last time, I have been working nonstop to take a 10,750 square foot house and squeeze it into an 8,250 square foot house. And I know that's hard to convey that that's a hardship. It's not, but I mentioned before, this is for sort of the 4th generation of this family. And this is going to be kind of the, Christmas morning spot. So, we're designing this for anywhere between 12 and 18 family members. So we removed 2 bedrooms, made some other moves. The biggest one is no garage. Now, I mentioned before, I lived up there for 2.5 years, graciously. The client sort of agreed that kind of made sense. I was sort of a de facto caretaker, learned everything about the site. You get a ton of snow up there, and it's the last place that gets plowed. So what I would like to propose, I have now an 8,250 square foot house that I have made work for the clients. My request would be the 1 TDR that would land there. It would go nowhere else. There's no sleight of hand. There's no, we're not going to monetize it. I'm not going to turn around and sell it. If I could get what's sort of this accepted amount, sort of 750 square feet, I don't want to call it a TDR. I don't know what else to call it. It's more like a GMQS, I'm sort of outside of that program as well. This house would be, including a garage, 9,000 feet all day. We would sort of forego the 10,750, and hopefully fund a nice and important project, whether it's, I realized looking at it, I think that's a private road because it's easements across, it's not a right-of-way. So it might not be a county road. I just want to be upfront about that, but it is, accessing the community school. So if one of the other of those projects seems, kind of worthy of, our participation, as if this were a GMQS type of enhancement.
Which is the address on Popcorn that is the location of the new house? I'm looking at the photograph,
I
aerial
think it
photograph.
has an address
So
yet.
What's the number on Popcorn?
this is TBD Popcorn.
It doesn't have an address yet.
But you're demolishing a house.
On the other property, so the existing house is somewhere here where the gray hatch is. And
The
then,
Popcorn Lane property is undeveloped.
so that's what, I just wanted to make sure,
What's the address of the house? where the-
44-681,
Highway 82.
Highway 82.
Right.
So it's not on this overhead map I'm looking at, so that's not helping me. Okay.
This is the approved site plan, recorded plat. It won't look any different other than, if I'm able to put this piece back and have a, kind of a functioning garage for vehicles and storage and, commit that square footage would land at this property. Literally across the street.
Okay, so I have a question for you, if unless anybody else has a
Kelly has her
question.
hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kelly.
go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can see me because I can't see the room now, but
Oh, that's too bad. We can see you.
okay, great, thank you. Yeah, well, Rob, I can, it seems like you're in a tricky spot in what you're being asked for from your clients and what our land use code provides for. I continue to be comfortable approving what is a discretionary TDR by this board. And I stand by that based on our conversations from the last, but I think what you're asking us is very outside of what our code allows for. And, we don't have a fractional TDR program right now. We will be discussing that based on the recommendations that recently came to us from, our Community Growth Advisory Committee, but that doesn't exist now. And, I think there are some differences between how GMQS is used and approved and what you're proposing. I mean, GMQS is someone who is seeking to build something. And you guys have your approvals to build, not applying GMQS to a property which is going to be severed from development. So I can see how you're trying to be creative here, but this doesn't really line up for me, and I don't believe we have discretion as a board to sort of invent land use code on the spot. So I'm kind of a little troubled, and I'm not inclined to go beyond the one TDR that we've already discussed. I guess I would look to maybe Leslie to ask if, in the future, if we do have a fractional TDR program, would Rob and his client be able to come back to purchase one of those to build a garage to cover that square footage that they're seeking? And perhaps that's a way to avoid the full cost of a full TDR now, and still be able to add some square footage in the future.
And I do recognize that this is, sort of a new idea, and we're commingling portions of it. On projects all the time, I can't think of a number, but we surrender TDRs that are 2,500 square feet, and we use 1,000 or 800 or 750 because of the underlying limits on development. So it's not, completely unheard of. And I guess that's what I would, if that's a way around it, that's what I'm suggesting is.
I think you're misunderstanding. You're welcome to do that now. You just would have to buy a full TDR. We're not telling you how much of it you need to use. We are not authorized to create a TDR for anything less than the 2,500 square feet and for anything less than what the market is going to pay you for that. So again, I can appreciate the creative thinking here, but I just don't see how we have any authorization under our land use code. And, I become very uncomfortable with trying to, it's just hard to be equitable and transparent and fair to all applicants in ComDev under such a proposal.
And I just want to, I don't mean to belabor it, but I want to make sure my point is clear. We're willing to go back and amend our land use application on 44-681 to cap it at 9,000 feet. So that, would sort of resolve any conflict between whether we call it 750 or, I'm just thinking about walking the square footage across the street. And that's not intended to be flippant whatsoever. That's a commitment that we can make. That's sort of capped in perpetuity, and I recognize that this is potentially a wrinkle in the code, but I think under those circumstances it would be, yes, you'd be granting 2 TDRs, but with the knowledge, understanding, and guarantee that those would be exchanged against this property only, and only up to 9,000 square feet.
Patty?
Yeah, you always have the opportunity, it's my understanding, correct me, staff, if I'm wrong, to come back in and compete for GMQS. Just because you use a TDR for part of the square footage, you can still compete with the other square footage under GMQS. Is that correct?
I didn't think you could do those.
That's what I'm asking staff to answer.
I have to take a look. I always have
Yeah.
to remember which way the code goes.
What I'm hearing is that, and I think the offer of, some kind of worthy project is great, and I appreciate you reducing the square footage, but it comes down to my comfort level in how many TDRs to award, and I'm with Kelly that I think 1 is very fair, and how you choose to use that in the square footage is up to you, and if you want additional square footage, you can either purchase another TDR, or you could come back in if it's allowed. We'll find out. You can't come back in and compete for GMQS.
Right, yeah, that's why I said I always have to double check myself in the code, but it says if a parcel has been approved as a TDR receiver site for new development and/or additional floor area, a GMQS allotment may not be applied for to
So
replace
they would
the
only
use.
have to buy another TDR.
Right, so they're limited in
So
But,
that was
but,
kind of my
but, wait,
understanding.
one second. Our current, what we're looking at with the county right now, and I don't know when we'll actually get to it, but it's in the thought process, is looking at fractional TDR. So you could purchase a TDR for X amount of square footage, not for the 2,500. And then that may supplement the square footage that you need for this house. But I think that this is definitely worthy of 1 TDR to take off of the Popcorn Lane property, address to be determined, and move it across the street, quote unquote, to the other property. I definitely support that if it's then restricted to use at that property across the street and not sold anywhere else. But I think that makes great sense. And as far as the additional square footage your client may want, then it would be the purchase of a second TDR, or to wait and see what we do with our TDR program and maybe be able to purchase a fractional TDR in the future if we make that change in the code.
I'm hesitant to roll the dice on the new code.
You should be.
Yeah, but
So-
right now, that's what's before us now. You'd have to buy the second TDR, well, in my mind.
Get that.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve?
So right now, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but they are approved for a landing site for 2 TDRs. If we approve one, they would still have the right to get another TDR from somewhere and do the full 2,500 square feet.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if they only built 8,250 right now, they would have that right in the future to still do that. Is that correct?
The vesting is through 2025, which is gonna, sort of lapse concurrent with the construction-ish. So I guess we would be, subject to what may or may not be coming and, granting some kind of an extension, I'm not sure. I mean, the opportunity to, I think the opportunity here to limit the square footage, sterilize this sort of troubled parcel, and do something for the community. There are a lot of smart people on staff and in the room, and when Leslie and I were talking about it, and I'm not putting you on the spot by any means.
Yeah, don't put words in my mouth.
And you can tell me if I misspeak. If we came up with a project, GMQS-ish, that's just a word because it's associated with the point system and all of that. Is there a way we could give back? And the answer was we could probably draft the finding in a way that could articulate that.
So are we being asked then to give a second TDR with a gift, give it back to the county? I'm definitely not comfortable with that.
But Steve may still be on
Sorry.
his question.
I just,
Well, I was going to pose that question, actually,
I beat you to it.
to all the commissioners. If we gave them 2 TDRs and they made a firm commitment, which would be incorporated into the resolution to do a donation, would that fly with any of you? Would it really
I
be
have to catch
similar
up a little
to
first.
in GMQS where the applicants do, they make donations to the fire department, they make a trail easement
Right.
donation, whatever is part of the GMQS process.
It's a normal part of that process, and so I don't want it to, become untoward, in this context, because that's really not the intent. I mean, it is.
Steve, we've never done that before in the past, and I would highly recommend against doing that now.
Me too.
That is not a very good idea at the moment. It is outside the bounds of the application criteria that is in front of you. To your point about the ability to get a TDR in the future, Suzanne can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that approval to land a TDR does not lapse, right? So that approval, they could go out and get that. Regardless of vesting in the future, they can go out and land a TDR on this property now that they have approval. Actually, they can land 2 TDRs on this property now. That's
And they could always come back in for an extension of vesting if need be.
I'd like to
Request.
back up a little bit. I think I had to leave the meeting on the 26th for a while because, do you remember that? That I
Well,
didn't-
you had had your hip.
No, it was 2 weeks after that, but still, I think I had to absent myself from that meeting, so I'm not familiar with that. Nice to meet you. I've never seen you before.
I sat through the entire public comment period for the airport, so
Yeah.
I
you've
got to
been
see
here.
you. Yeah, I got to see you. So
I should recognize you. I just need to back up. So this Popcorn Lane property was bought knowing it was constrained in order to attain a TDR.
2.
That is the very basis for which I started opposing TDRs in the first place. Buying a constrained lot, knowing it's constrained, and hoping to trade that in for a TDR. that has disturbed me for quite a while. So that's a problem for me. And then, how big is the house that you are demolishing?
Around 4,500 square feet.
And how old is it?
It was built in 1984.
Okay, great, thank you. So, you know, I'm not inclined to bend our code to add square footage up to 9,000 square feet because I have a big family too, but I don't need a 9,000 square foot house to have Christmas morning with my 9 grandchildren and my children. So it's a very extravagant undertaking. I understand that's your business and I appreciate your efforts to make it work for your client. It doesn't pull at my heartstrings to fit in that extra few hundred square feet of space. So I'm having a hard time with this thing from the first place. And then there are, I think, 128 TDRs out there right now that you could purchase another TDR if you so wanted. And I'm thinking, I know the road up to ACS really well. I think it would be cheaper to buy a TDR than to improve that road significantly.
Well, the notion was, at the very least, do some guardrails or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, you never know how much you're gonna have to pay for a TDR at this point. And
So when
maybe
we-
they're a little bit more valuable right now with the threat hanging over them that's in the paper about what the commissioner's gonna do and everything, but, honestly, it's hard for me to even imagine approving one TDR because the purchase was intended for that. I just, you know, that lot doesn't need to be conserved. It's unbuildable. It's constrained. It's not gonna be built on. And so I'm not quite sure what we're giving the TDR for on that. What's the county getting for that TDR award? And so that, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear your whole presentation. I might feel differently had I heard it on the 26th, but just from what I've heard today and from reading the packet, I'm not inclined to even vote for one TDR. I hate to say it to you because I think you're expecting it and you must have had some indication at that meeting that it was gonna happen. But maybe some things can be filled in for me. It looks like you may have some answers for me.
Yes, on a constrained site, they have a right to build a 5750 house on that hill on a constrained site with access issues. And if we did a takings process, then we do this, I don't know if it's a negotiation or what, where we would compensate the landlord. If we just say you absolutely can't build a house there, then giving them a TDR for that is, I think, the standard procedure, isn't it, Suzanne?
I mean, it's incumbent on us to give them a TDR.
Yeah, we can't just
No,
say you
no,
can't
it's
build
not
on this
incumbent
house
upon
and you don't get anything in return. We have to make it possible for them to either do a variance, they can build the house on the steeper slope and all of that, or
The way the process would work, you know, again, if they came in for development of the parcel, it would be denied administratively because it does not meet the code. It cannot meet the code. It's developed on all of the constraints, many of the constraints where we don't allow development, you know, would prohibit development. That would then precipitate the opportunity for the owner to request a takings determination by the board. The board could agree that our denial resulted in a takings. Then you have a discussion about how do you remediate that takings. In many cases, remediation results in a development approval, where you have the opportunity to determine what can work on a property. An alternative to that would be consideration of a TDR. So that's the reason the constrained site TDR process was put in the code was essentially almost a shortcut to that determination by the board. If someone can recognize up front that they really think this property is constrained, I know I'm going to get denied, I know I'm going to go to a takings, you know, we're going to go through 3 different steps. Why don't I just go straight to the BOCC, say, I think my site's constrained. If you agree, are you willing to grant me a TDR to avoid development of the
Yeah,
parcel?
that's what I
So
thought.
that's the process we're in today.
But this was
And-
manipulative and intentional.
I would just, one thing I want to add, whether it was this owner or the prior owner who I had worked with his consultants over decades, I think. I mean, there is no doubt that this parcel is constrained. This, this has all of the qualities of what we envisioned when we created that constrained site provision in the code. I mean, Leslie's walked it. I haven't walked it. But I'm familiar with it. You climbed it, yeah. I mean, it's straight up and down. So yes, it has all of those issues, and that's, Rob walked through all of that at the last meeting, or the prior meeting. So, anyway, hopefully that helps give.
Yes, well, I thought that was the case, but it's the manipulation and the intention of this that bothered me, just like the other one that we talked about up near the music school and stuff, where you purposely buy a lot that you know is constrained. It's like the back doorway into getting a TDR, and it just bothers me. It's not what the intention of the TDRs were in the first place. It's like this piece of property is not this amazing piece of property that needs to be conserved, and these people are making a sacrifice to not build on this beautiful lot, and therefore they get a TDR, or to keep development off the backside of Aspen Mountain or other rural spots in the Crystal River Valley and other places. This is an intentional purchase of a constrained lot in order to game the system, and that really bothers me. And so,
And if I may,
I just want to know, are my hands tied? Do I have to award a TDR because it's a constrained site?
Well,
You have the discretion. It is a discretionary
Eventually come back to us probably.
decision
Because
for the BOCC.
when it comes up, it says in what the staff writes says, if it's found constrained, then you need to award a TDR. It doesn't say need. There's some language there that indicates that, but I'm sorry, go ahead and talk.
I'm concerned about, and I understand you are understanding the section of the code. I don't want you to misunderstand my intentions. I've been to many, many board meetings. So I went into this eyes wide open, read that code section up, down, front, back. This is the poster child of that code section. Whether it was me or previous owner or the next owner, I sort of felt like we were approaching it as a win-win. Like, this isn't gonna get developed, and we're gonna move the floor area across the street, and I'm not gonna import TDRs from elsewhere in the county. So I want you to understand that my intentions were sincere, and I'm not trying to game anybody. I've many years ago, but I've worked for some of the developers that are building stuff up and down the road, and this is a different. The intention of the clients and myself and this process, and again, eyes wide open. If I thought I would be here thumb wrestling with you guys, we would not own this property, because it's kind of not, at the end of the day, it's, I just wanted to interject that we really had, kind of the best intentions, and maybe, not, I'm not sitting there, so I'm not thinking about, sort of the broader issues, but I just wanted to, let you know how we were characterizing it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that your perspective on it is obviously very different than mine, and you felt like you were acting in good faith, and this was a reasonable step to take to get the square footage for this house. But, I mean, I just have to ask, why didn't you just buy some TDRs instead of buying this lot?
Well, so you said there were 182. At the time, we did a
128.
128. We did a hard target search dating back to the inception of the program. I called people that I knew had them. I spoke with Steve. I spoke with John McBride, other clients that I know. They were, like I said, it was more the scarcity of them than it was the price. But now, they're around $2 million, and that's
Maybe. I mean, yeah, we don't really know, but
knows.
yeah. Yes, Patty, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Francie, I totally understand your position on this, and I think the thing that convinced me about the one TDR was that the square footage was going to stay at that end of the valley.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last.
The square footage was going to stay at that end of the
Mm-hmm.
valley, that TDR is not going to be sold somewhere else. It's going to move across the street.
Mm-hmm.
So that would give me a level of comfort. And you're right, we are uncomfortable when people purchase something they know is constrained and come back and want a TDR. But to ask for two for that, because that's what you have the right to use on the property on Highway 82, I can't go there, but I can go for the one with the square footage staying, up
At the
the east end of
8750.
town.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from you yet. Did you have something to say?
I think Patty articulated it for me. I think what we're here to do is approve a single TDR for this property, which I'm prepared to do. Everything else to me sounds like horse trading, and as interested as I am in creative solutions, it concerns me that opens the door and it basically shoots the legs out of our comm dev department, who we've got these rules we've created for a purpose, so we're actually following protocol, and we're not stepping outside the bounds of our own rules. And this to me is just like wonderful creative ideas. I could think of 1,000 ways you could spend money to do something good for the community in addition to the things you've proposed. But that's not what we're here for. And so
I have the same. I had the same concerns. I mean, at the end of the day, it's transactional, right? But that's the reason I came up with that was because in the past in GMQS applications, we did one at Highlands where there's the turn lane now because I said this is stupid. Why don't you have a turn lane that goes into the garage and then the other one that goes up to the Ritz?
I don't think it's the intent of your offer to do the community improvement. It's just the fact that it's outside the bounds of what we have.
I understand, but I guess I want to characterize my intent. I'm not
No, I
trying
get
to
it.
game you guys. I mean, it's sincere as the original as the original intent.
Steve?
Kelly, I don't know if Kelly had her hand up, or did we lose her?
No, I've been watching for her hand. I haven't seen it.
Well, she didn't have
She's
a
not
yellow and she
showing
had a-
up,
She's not
Michaela.
on the screen right now.
Okay, great, thanks. All
So
right.
we could have Kelly go first, that's okay, and then
Do you
I'll
want to
go
speak,
after her.
Kelly?
No, I think I made my position pretty clear when we launched discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm, thank you.
So the applicant, they could buy another TDR, which would remove some square footage from somewhere else in the
Exactly.
county. That is a distinct public benefit right there in itself. Doesn't have to be improving the road to the community school or something. The TDR program is geared towards, transferring the square footage from elsewhere onto this site where they're already approved for 2 TDRs. I'm totally comfortable with approving the 1 TDR. We don't have to rule on whether this Popcorn Lane lot it should never have been created, but it was created. It's somebody else's fault that we're dealing with this
think it was a
this weird
judge.
lot that should,
It's a
I don't know how it got created, but we're like correcting a mistake from the past that somehow this got approved by somebody, I don't know.
I think it was a lawsuit. I think we can blame it on a judge.
The history of
It
it.
does go back decades. I've got 10 actually banker's boxes when we purchased it, and that was the whole point. Is I understand the process is go to community development, they say no, I appeal to y'all, you say no, we go to court, et cetera. So I did not want to. I was so tempted to throw the boxes out, and I just said, well, let's see what happens. So
What are we
So
looking at on the screen
at this
here?
point, this is,
You finish up.
I mean, I'm ready to approve
I think it's
the
a public
one
hearing.
TDR personally. This is a public hearing.
think
Joe
it is.
Wells was on there earlier. Maybe he wanted to, maybe he was listening to this discussion. I'm not sure, but
What are we
I think
looking
we
at on
should
the
do-
screen here before we go to the public comment?
So that is a what if that I came up with. Previous to, I looked at this lot as
The popcorn lot.
Yeah, as an investment for clients several years before the sort of COVID craziness and TDRs and everything else. I had no notion of the constrained site. What I was suggesting, again, trying to be creative, is building envelopes that don't touch the ground. So, coming with building methods, because it's constrained, the footprint is small, but you can expand out of that, just don't touch the ground.
It's very cool.
It's a cool house, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like it's in the Peruvian mountains up there.
Well, should we listen to the public? Is there anybody in the public who'd like to speak to this? Is Joe still on? McKellar?
I think Joe just likes watching our meetings during the afternoon.
Joe, did you want to speak to us?
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm just listening to the meeting.
See, I knew it.
Sorry to disappoint.
Sorry for you, Joe.
I don't know how you do it.
More power to you.
It's always good to hear you, Joe.
Anybody else? Whoever Grayson is, anybody recognize who that is?
Grayson's with me.
Oh, he's with you?
She, yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll close the public hearing. Public comment and bring it back to
Go
the
ahead.
board. I certainly am not going to barter beyond 1 TDR in terms of square feet, because come on. It's like,
So
8750 is a big house.
I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution approving 1 constrained site TDR for Independence 44681 LLC.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Yes, Leslie?
I heard really clearly from the board that you would like this TDR landed at 44681 Highway 82. So I will need to revise the reso, putting that in there. I'll put a finding in there.
Yeah.
And then under the now therefore be it resolved, I will add the address in there, the TDR to be used for development only on
Yeah.
this.
Because that was represented by the applicant the first hearing.
Right, but I also heard that from the board as well.
Yeah.
Right.
If you support that.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie.
Okay, so I would amend my motion to
Include that.
include that amendment.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Well, the applicant still does have the right to purchase a TDR and build their 10,750 square foot house, which if they, I would urge them to do that if they want to. That would
Or not.
be a public, would remove square footage from elsewhere in the county, not from the Popcorn Lane site, but that's what the TDR program is for, and that would be, we'd be totally following the existing code and the intent of the TDR program then, and,
Or they could build a smaller house and not have to buy another TDR.
yeah.
Francie likes that idea.
Okay, I think it's time for us to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Thank you, nay. Okay.
Thank you.
It passes 4-1.
I do want to thank you for kind of the thoughtful discourse around it. Last time I know everybody was tired and my presentation was too long and a little cumbersome, so
I want to thank you for sitting through all the comments about the airport. That was brave of you, my friend.
well, I have to say I don't audit these meetings like Joe, but
That's not a bad
Well, thank you very much. Remind me what your name is.
Rob Sinclair.
I look
So
forward to
thank you
seeing
all.
you again.
Rob at one point was the chairman of our Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus.
Oh, really?
For a year, I think it was, wasn't it, Rob?
Yeah, that's where we met on that board, and
Well, I'll definitely recognize you the next time.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you,
again.
Suzanne and Leslie.
So, Francie, on the next item, I would like to put a motion out to continue the resolution denying the Jennifer O. Styleslinger site plan and activity envelope review replacement of non-conforming structure with significant changes, and continue the public hearing on that to, do we have a date certain?
November 1st.
To November 1st of 2022.
Thank you, Patty.
Is there,
23.
do we have
I
to
can't
open
go
it up?
back.
Do we have to open it up to the public
that?
hearing? Is it a public hearing
And I
item? So we have to
continued the
open it up.
public hearing, but we
Yeah.
need to open the public hearing. Yes, you're right,
On the
Greg.
continuation of this.
I'll second the motion if it wasn't seconded.
And then we need to open the public
And
hearing and
the
continue.
public hearing is now open to comment on the continuation of this resolution. And now it's closed. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, that passes 5-0, and it is time for open discussion.
I have one item.
Okay.
I got a follow-up. Thanks, everybody, for, I got it from Tori Jarvis. Did you guys see it?
Nope.
She talked with Laura about the letter QQ wanted to send in regarding Shoshone. And it apparently, the reason Greg and Kelly, you didn't see it, it was going out to the QQ board for signature. And the reason it came to me was because it went to the Northwest COG board, and I'm sitting on there, one of their officers. So, so Tori has decided, because of the concerns about submitting this letter for the River District grant from Pickens County, after talking with John Stabney, the letter of support will be removed from your agenda. This is from your QQ agenda, and it will be removed from my Northwest COG agenda for tomorrow. And so, Tori thanked me for connecting them with Laura. We'll plan to discuss Pickens' concerns further with Johnny when he returns.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, Kelly, did you get an email from Tori? Because I haven't seen anything, and I'm looking through my spam folder, and I still don't see anything.
This email that I got said to all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're not getting it. That's kind of bizarre.
you didn't get the letter because it only went to the QQ executive board members, like your officers on QQ,
Oh.
which is something I didn't know that you were aware
That's,
of.
that's their own rule. They need to sort out. Thanks for that, Patty.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Any other open discussion?
I guess on that item, I just wonder if when John has returned, if this is an executive session item to discuss.
Of the water issue?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, well,
yeah.
you know, the plans for all that, so I'll just flag that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Remarkably early.
I know, thank you. Thank you very much.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Bye.
Bye, Kelly.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Okay.